lot of people involved. And, when things go smoothly, we don't really pay attention, but for our little piece in our lane. But many times, things don't go perfectly smoothly. We find out about other pieces of the puzzle. One of the ones that I found out about a few ways were probate bonds. And in fact, I'm actually a petitioner on probate, and I got in the mail not just any, this is literally yesterday, not just any marketing piece about probate bonds, but from our guest today. Now, he didn't send this to me because, I don't think, because he's going to be on the show. He sent this because I filed a probate bond and used my address, and here I get his marketing piece to learn more about it. I'm excited to have, and I guess, Phil Pavarini, who is the proprietor at probatecourtbond.com. So thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Bill. And great program you have. I've been just got onto it a few months ago, and I've been watching it weekly when I can. So thanks for putting this on.
Well, thanks. And not only do you watch it weekly, we also, for those who can't get on live on the YouTube, we live stream it on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. And if you're watching on one of those channels, feel free to put your comments there live. We'll try to answer them. We do this every week, Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We do also record it. But if you're watching on the live streams, feel free to put your comments there. I'll be watching those and reporting back as appropriate. So, Phil, give me a little background on you. When you, how'd you end up in probate court bonds? When you were a kid, did you play with like Barbie and Ken dolls and say, one day I'm going to grow up and do probate bonds, or how'd that happen?
Well, I'll tell you what, Bill, we don't have all day. I know you want to get out of here quick, so I'll make it pretty short. The short story is I started the way I got into insurance anyway is I was a private investigator, and I had a horrible time finding errors and omissions insurance, and that was about 20 years ago. So I used my investigative skills, so to speak, found the best carrier in our state to do that. And ever since, I've been doing insurance full time. In the progress of doing the insurance work, I ran across bail bonds, and we were licensed bail bond agents for about 5 years until my blood pressure just got a little bit too high, and bail bonds was a little too stressful for me. So in that whole realm, I did a lot of process service, private investigations, and just ran across a lot of probate matters. So one thing led to another, and I was able to connect the markets, the bond markets, with the consumers. And I primarily do probate as probably at least half of our business at this point.
Nice. And so I want to share, you have the website, probatecourtbond.com. And I want to share that because I think it really does a really nice outline of the program. Tell us kind of what you do and how you do it. So different types of probate bonds. You have administrator bonds, executor bonds. That's based on whether the person is named in the will or not. And then fiduciary bonds. Explain what the difference is with the fiduciary bond.
Sure. A lot of times in different courts or different parts of the country, we find, or even just different attorneys sometimes might refer to a state bond as a fiduciary bond. So they're one and the same, generally speaking. A lot of the forms from the bond carriers also might mention fiduciary bond at the top. It just depends on the carrier, but it's essentially the same thing as any of the other probate bonds.
And then you have in probate court, we have guardians and conservatorships in California. Guardians would be an estate on behalf of a minor, custodian, a conservatorship on behalf of somebody who's not able to manage their own affairs. So do all these bonds cost about the same? Or is one more costly than the other? How does it work?
Well, for the different types of probate bonds, they're all going to, generally, they're going to be the same across the board for a particular state. So the pricing may vary state to state, and it's going to vary carrier to carrier, but it will basically the difference between a guardian and an estate bond or an administrator bond, personal representative bond, all those are going to be the same price schedule for each carrier for the state.
Got it. And then if you want to be a fiduciary yourself or be a personal representative, you might also get a bond to protect yourself separate from the estate, right?
Those are some professional liability products. Generally, we see that if we're looking at a professional guardian or someone that's handling many estates, they might have a separate policy. Yes, that does both general liability and professional element to that.
Got it. So the issue of bonds come up most commonly in my experience in Los Angeles County, where we have two types of probate, basically. At least there's one big fork in the road that we would call full authority, limited authority. Full authority would mean that the administrator or executor has pretty much authority to do what they want. They kind of tell the court along the way. For example, in selling a property, they file a notice, but unless somebody objects, they move forward. Versus limited authority, you have to publish that you're going to sell the property, then bring to court the sale for contract approval. And what happens is when the petitioner, executor, administrator gets approved, the judge will say, do you want limited or full authority? And they'll say, what's the difference? They'll say, well, the bond on the limited is only a $20,000 bond, which I don't know, a couple $100 maybe. But full authority on a $500,000 property could be $1,700. And inevitably, the customer goes, oh, well, I'll save money on the bond. Let's go that route. But oftentimes, that's not really where the savings is, right?
Well, some of the things you mentioned there might be specific to California. So in the states that I'm familiar with, which is Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan, we were just recently licensed in Florida, but I'm not intimately familiar with their process yet. But I think, what is the question specifically there?
Well, I mean, sometimes the bond might cost more, but gives you more authority, you get through cheaper. And so in my experience, paying extra for a bond, the difference between a $20,000 bond and a $500,000 bond might be $1,500. But the court filing fees alone on a limited authority could be that much. By the time you add a publication fee, filing fee, if you make a mistake, refiling fees. And so the bonds can cost less. How long does it take to get a quote on a bond? If I'm a customer applying for a probate and I would know how much it was going to cost, what's the process to get a dollar amount so at least I can make that decision and be informed by it?
Sure. Well, that could vary as well. And that's where things start to get a little muddy, and that you don't generally shop a bond. So you're not typically going to call 20 bond carriers or 20 agents and get a bunch of prices.
Mm-hmm.
And each carrier has their own rating schedule and pricing. And each underwriter with those carriers are going to have different parameters, which they're going to underwrite the bond by. So basically, there's no way to get a real price unless you submit an application, and you get that application in front of an agent that's familiar with the different carriers. So I know my carriers that won't take a bankruptcy. There's just no exceptions. They don't take it. I have another carrier that won't take a felony. So most carriers don't even ask about criminal background, but some do. That might be the best price for that bond. And that's just where you get into the nitty gritty of what it costs to get a basic estimate. You're welcome to call, email us, or we have a chat function on our website where you can let us know the state and the bond amount. We can give you an estimate, but to get an actual price, we need to see that application, and we don't necessarily need to submit it to carriers because we work with so many and we're familiar with those underwriting requirements. So we can look at an application and get a pretty good idea of who they're going to get approved within the time frame that they need and that sort of thing.
And so what I hear you saying, I think, is that some of your carriers will approve a bond and others will decline it. One declines it, you can take it to somewhere else. Maybe they charge a little bit more, but at least the customer can get a bond, right?
Right. And
I think this is the key thing why I wanted to invite you here for all the people on the call, the real estate agents and attorneys who follow what we do here, which is just because a bond company says they're not bondable doesn't mean they're bondable. It means they're not able to do it for whatever reason. And you certainly want to work with a company who's going to at least try and exhaust options and shop it and realize if you have a book of business, they're going to take the good with the bad and try to find a way to work it rather than just cherry pick the easy deals and leave you hanging on the other ones. And that's really the main purpose of here today is to say, here's a bond person that you can talk to. It's not just a faceless, I don't know, for all we know, you're an avatar, Phil. You're so good looking, you might not be real, but you're not a faceless person. But you're actually a person people have met, can reach out to you, can email, call, or get a quote for. That's what the purpose of our call today is. So how often do you get a bond where it's declined by one carrier and have to resubmit it, but get it approved at a second or third carrier? How often does it happen?
Typically, the first carrier that we submit it to, we will get a pretty close indication as to if any other admitted markets are going to approve that bond. So right away, we can tell generally within an hour or two. We say 2 to 4 hours maximum, but as soon as we look at that, submit it to the first carrier we think would fit. If they don't fit, we'll know why right away. At that point, we work with all of the major brokers across the country. A lot of people are familiar with some really big names: Bond Exchange, CNA Surety, Propeller is another big name in the industry, Main Street America. We have a new appointment with RLI, West Bend Mutual. So we work with a lot of big carriers, but also brokers who can help us access pretty much an infinite number of bonding companies to access. So the answer to your question is, once that first carrier declines, we'll decide where to go from with it from there and send it directly there. So then the consumer's not getting, 20 credit hits.
Right.
Because that's the other thing to keep in mind. Every time you submit to a new carrier, a lot of times you're going to get another credit inquiry on your credit history.
For those listening along, in insurance lingo, when they say we have a new appointment, it doesn't mean he has a time and a date he's going out to lunch with somebody. It means they've been appointed to represent a carrier. So when he says a new appointment, that just means he has a new company he represents that he can present to his customers. Hey, just real quick, a little housekeeping. This is Probate Weekly. We do it every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We live stream it on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, a bunch of other sites. I'm Bill Gross, a real estate broker here in LA, California, building a national team of probate experts. And I interview experts in the field of probate, trust administration, trust litigation, probate litigation, so we can be better at our jobs and do a better job of helping our customers. By coincidence, if you happen to be in the LA area, I'd love to invite you. After dinner tonight, we'll finish around 5 o'clock, and starting at 5:30 in the Mid-Wilshire area, I'm hosting Brew Real Estate. It's a once-a-month event, first Thursday of the month. If you come and bring a business card and you're a real estate agent with a license, I will buy you a free craft beer. We get about 40, 50 people together. It's a great networking event. Love to have you join. We get some lenders there. We get some commercial people, and it's a lot of fun, a great way to meet other real estate agents and real estate professionals. And then tomorrow in Diamond Bar, Agents Helping Agents, the first Friday of the month, we get together. We have great speakers, a great agent, David Ramirez, talk about how he built his business, and Casey Eberhardt, talk about networking and building your business as a real estate agent. Both those events are free. And if you're a real estate agent, I'll buy you a free beer at the Brew Real Estate. And so, okay, we're up to date. So, Phil, you work with mostly attorneys or consumers? I know you do some marketing because I got a piece of it. How would you describe the probate bond business? Where does your business tend to come from?
Well, I'll tell you, I market to everyone. So if you're ever familiar with the old school marketing programs, they used to have a term called shotgun marketing, and it's probably fallen out of favor, that particular term, more recently. But I do a lot of direct mail, both to probate attorneys and estate attorneys. But we also do broaden out that advertising. So we do online advertising and billboards. We even have some billboards in Ohio and that sort of thing. Primarily, we target attorneys, yes, and other folks that are related to the probate industry. Sometimes we'll target senior advisors or financial advisors, that sort of thing as well. Primarily attorneys, though.
Great. And this event is meant to be participative. So if you have questions, I'd love for you to raise your hand in the chat box or in the Zoom application, or put a question in the chat box. I'm calling you. Feel free to put your networking information in if you're on the Zoom, your name, address, contact info, where you do business, what you bring to the value, and what you bring to the market. Love to help you with that. And also, if you're watching on the live stream, we've got a bunch of people on YouTube and Facebook. Feel free to put questions there. I see somebody advertising their sales system. Feel free. This is a networking event. We're made here to build each other's business, and we want to support with this. So feel free to ask any questions you might have. So as you build your business, Phil, it sounds like you have a shotgun. One of the challenges that real estate agents have in particular, and always ask me about, is how to build business and relationships with attorneys. I'm sure you have, a number of attorneys that give you business. You probably have a few that give you regular business and more valuable. How do you build and cultivate those relationships, or have you been successful in doing that in the past?
That's an interesting question, Bill, because I have very rarely run across an attorney that uses any of our services. I also have a private investigative business, mainly do process service and mortgage related default related investigations and locates, but very rarely in any of my businesses for the last 20 going on 23 years have I run across an attorney or a law firm that sees our service, sees the technology that we use, the speed and the efficiency, the updates that we give to clients. We don't email you. Sometimes I hear of bonding companies, or you submit an application, you're lucky to hear back from them in a few, 2, 3, or 4 days. And then I've had one recently, it's going on 3 weeks. Customer
Thank
paid for
you.
the
Have a
bond,
great
but
day.
have it. So we're very speedy as well for our requests. Typically, our bonds are always issued within 24 hours, sometimes within 2 to 3 hours. So those are some of the things that, we keep clients coming back.
So part of why you're on this call is because that's my experience. And for those of you listening, I literally had a probate listing. It's in escrow, and we still have the bond paperwork completed. And I think to myself, how can that possibly be? My attorney's done, just with me, 3 or 4 probates a year. They all needed some kind of a bond. And here's a case where it's a $500,000 bond. I guess it's about a $1,700 premium. So it's a $100 premium. Somebody's got to be in the business of processing that paperwork. My client filled out everything, sent it back to them, and somehow they don't have the paperwork. She copied me when she sent it to them. They basically sent her blank pages and say, we'll resell it, send it out again. It took a day and a half to get a quote because she's not advancing the money for the bond, even though on the form it's her credit card info. We're advancing the money, part of our service. And it took a day and a half to get a quote. Well, how much is it that I'm committing to for me to budget things properly? And, there's just so much back and forth between me, the attorney, the paralegal, and the customer. It's just all a waste of time. And so I started researching bond companies. And I'll just tell you guys, I've been in LA County and seen certain bond reps. I used to see them daily, or at least the same one weekly. And I can't get the time of day from them to call me back or respond back directly. And here's Phil's nice enough to come on. And my goal was to build a relationship with him so I can consolidate my business, learn his system so we can efficiently work together on and build business. And I urge you the same. If you're going to do business in volume, you want vendors who aren't in the way or aren't giving you marginal service, but actually helping you look good to your customers and look good to your attorneys. So literally, that's why I'm here today. To be honest, as much as I want this to be entertaining for all of you to listen to it, I'm looking to build a relationship with him to help me with my business. I would urge you to do the same or find something better if you can do that. So Phil, one of the challenges is that sometimes the customer isn't bondable. So like I have a case right now where the heir, she's going to come into about $500,000, single heir on a property, her father left her, but she otherwise is very low income. I won't get too personal about it, low credit, low income, and so on. Nice lady, no criminal history, but normally wouldn't be bondable. I know some companies have a product where the attorney can get bonded with them and have a controlled account. Other companies have like a blanket where the attorney gets, let's say, a line of insurance he's available to cover and they draw against that. What do you do? How do you help attorneys who want to work with those clients and can ensure the bond gets repaid because now they have a vested interest in it? So we want good business. We don't want business that creates claims. We want business that avoids claims. What services or how do you work around that to help people who otherwise aren't bondable to get bonded for somebody else who is qualified?
Mm-hmm. And we have a few different options available to help folks in Ohio. And I understand in other states, sometimes they might do the co-guardian or they might do a co-executor, that sort of thing. That happens occasionally in Ohio, but I can probably count on one hand how many times that's happened to me in the last 15 years selling bonds. So it doesn't happen often in Ohio. There are other states that do. What we can do is take it to a third-party broker, some of the ones I mentioned earlier, and they have carriers that will write bonds for folks that don't otherwise qualify. Those carriers sometimes accept a co-signer, or they might require all of the heirs to be co-signers. So we don't mean that all of them have to go through credit, but all of them have to sign the indemnity agreement. So essentially to the bonding carrier, that's going to relieve any or most of your potential claims against the bond, unless you're coming from a creditor. But the number one way that we see, at least in Ohio and Michigan, where we do most of our bonds at this point, we see the attorney act as a professional fiduciary, and they will have that annual bond approval which you mentioned, and that's where we get them approved and we underwrite the attorney for maybe 5 million, 10 million. We have one with a 25 million blanket authority for the year. So at that point, the attorney would become the executor or the guardian or whoever it is, rather than the client. Even if we could get that brokered bond, that's going to be more expensive for them. So
Right.
that's the thing that we try to do. We always try to get the client the lowest fees, and it doesn't matter how we do that. That's our number one goal. Number one is what the client needs as far as time, and number two is the speed or the price.
And so the attorney would pass on the prorated cost of the bond. Do they charge extra to be in that role to make up for the risk, or how do you see? Do you know how that gets handled by the attorney?
I don't. It's different from the attorney to attorney, and I'm not an attorney, so I don't know all the legal requirements. I've had some attorneys tell me that they are prohibited from advancing fees. But then I have other attorneys that advance them all day long, and we're talking about the same states here.
Right.
So even attorneys, I think, interpret the different circumstances, or maybe there's some nuance with the case that may make that true. But I don't. I'm not sure.
So we regularly advance fees as a real estate broker, as long as I'm in control of the situation and I know the customer is, and I have the listing and so on. We do that. It depends on the case and the customer and the attorney and all that, but regularly do. Either we advance money to the heir ahead of time and they get charged for that, or sometimes we'll lend the money in advance at no cost, depending on the circumstances. We got asked a question: what states are you in? I know Michigan, Florida, Ohio, and I think another state you said.
Indiana. We're working on New York and New Jersey, but New York is a little challenging. Their licensing requirements are a little different than everywhere else.
And the purpose of my having one today, even though he doesn't service California, which is where is really more the learning of the relationship, learning of the product, and learning how to work together. Now, as a broker, I'm licensed in California, but I have a team that's national, so we're doing business, and I'm looking to do more business in the Midwest and in Florida in particular, and in Michigan. So we're looking to build a business out there. But the real truth is, if you listen on the call today, I just want you to think about: here's a guy trying to chase the same business you're getting from petitioners, executives, administrators, and from attorneys, and working those same transactions. And how can you either find the same business he's looking for, or how can you find his competitor in your local market if you're in a different state, and work with them? And hopefully today we'll learn some lessons. So let me ask you, that's a question I want to ask is, how do you work with any real estate agents? Because you're chasing some of the people. I know that real estate agents are every day calling petitioners, calling attorneys, looking to get that business. You chase the same places, you're mailing to some of the same people. Have you ever coordinated any marketing, or other than me, obviously, have you ever worked with real estate agents to help you build your business?
I've worked with some real estate agents, at least in the local area, for about 20 years, because before I did the private investigations, I didn't go real far back on that history, but immediately prior to that, I was doing mortgage loan closings for about 2 years. So I did have a relationship with mortgage brokers and realtors and that sort of thing. Now I don't really have an active marketing to realtors, because it's just such a different. I do have some realtors on our mailing list that might work, especially with seniors or especially with estates, but overall, realtors are not a huge target for us.
You got me, so now you're good. I'll take care of that for you.
Yeah, and you did mention California. I'm licensed in 4 states. But through agreements with other licensed agents and brokers, we can accept applications nationwide. So that works on a referral basis. My office doesn't participate or do application, other than we do look at it, and we will send it to the broker or the agent licensed in your state that we think is going to give you the best price for whatever application you submit. But after you submit it, you'll never speak with me or anyone in our office. We simply submit that same thing, so you don't have to reapply, but we submit all the information and it gets transferred electronically, for California or any state.
Well, we need to talk. Like I said, my goal of this call was partially to build that relationship and start working with you. I really want to work with a partner in a probate bond rather than just some vendor who treats me like I'm just some annoying real estate agent. I might be annoying, but I'm trying to get my customers escrow approved and done. So those are the states that cover, Scott, and we cover the states that Phil covers, and we got a lot of good networking information in the chat box as well. So in the course of your marketing, then it sounds like you're mostly doing kind of what I would call transactional mailing, social media. Do you do any kind of networking? Do you go to bar events? Do you go to bars and attorney bar association events? Do you do any kind of fiduciary event marketing or anything like that? Or is it just not really productive enough and your other business covers enough for you?
Well, I'll tell you how I run most of my marketing and all of my businesses is typically if you don't see marketing pieces from me, then I'm too busy to do marketing pieces. So when you ask how much marketing I participate in, I only participate in as much as I have time to do when I'm not doing bonds. So when you get that, we typically have at least one direct mail go out a month, and those are directly to targeted real estate or estate planning attorneys mostly. And but I do other marketing. We are members of the Ohio Guardianship Association. We just joined the Florida Guardianship Association. I try to attend most of the association meetings, the Cleveland Association of Paralegals, and I try to also attend as many of those, at least Zoom events as I can. I was just joking with a friend of mine the other day, 20 years ago, going to the insurance and the bar association events and that sort of thing. That's where we did all of our networking at the bar, and that's
Exactly.
just, especially since COVID, a lot of that has changed, even though it's coming back now.
It's amazing. And to try to get back involved in it, it's just hard to justify the time when you can look. I'm on a Zoom call right now with 46 people, plus another 50 or so watching on various live stream, and then we'll get about 200 more views. So it's hard to justify the time of driving to an event, parking a car, hanging out for 2-3 hours. It's nice to meet people. It's important. We're a people business, but the numbers, it's hard to figure out the right mix between in-person and Zoom and online stuff in this post-COVID era. How has that changed your marketing? Obviously, going to less events. Is there anything you do more of now as far as your real estate business?
Well, I definitely do more Zoom meetings now. So that is one thing is just, recently, in the last, especially in the last few years, but I definitely do more online meetings. I guess we do less in-person meetings. I mean, there was a time when marketing to me meant when I had nothing to do, I'd load up a cooler. When I started my private investigator business, I'd load up my cooler with bags of Hershey's, and I'd go around to all the litigation firms that do process service, and I wouldn't be soliciting. I'd bring them a box of chocolate, for their office, and that was my marketing. And I'd drive around the town for a day or two, but that never happens anymore. I don't ever have a whole day. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go on vacation if I have a whole day off. So that's changed a lot, I think, just in the time that you have to go and physically do things and shake hands. If I was in California, though, I'd be not though.
Well, I think part of it also is, maturity of your business. Like when I started in real estate, I went out in the field every day, 5 days a week, and would go out and network with people live in their offices, attorneys' offices, real estate offices, lending offices, bank offices. And as my business built up, I just started getting phone calls and didn't have to do that and started doing mailers and phone calls. So I think starting out, I still think going to offices and going to events live is really valuable. It's probably harder today, live events, live offices, because I think it's about 1/3 or 1/4 of people in an office today that there used to be. Even still, post-COVID, are we post-COVID? I think today we are technically or something, but it's hard to really figure that out. Okay, again, just to kind of go back and pitch a couple of things real quickly, if I can. I'm Bill Gross, real estate broker here in LA. And if you're in Los Angeles and a real estate agent, I'd love to have you come. Right when this is over, we're going to run over at 5:30 into the mid-Wilshire area. All Season Brewery, historic place, formerly the Firestone Auto Repair Place, made into a beautiful outdoor beer facility. Love to have you come there. I'll buy you free beer for a real estate agent with a business card. Come there. That's me tonight, 5:30 to 7:30 local time. And then if you're a real estate agent in Southern California, tomorrow, Friday, the first Friday of every month, we do a Agents Helping Agents event at the Holiday Inn and Diamond Bar. And we get about 40, 50 people with 2 great speakers. In fact, let me just show you real quick. I'm talking a lot about this, but this is the Brew Real Estate event. Brew Real Estate, beer and real estate at the All Season Brewing Company. And that's what it looks like empty. and they have craft beer, and I'll buy you one for free. And then tomorrow's event is Agents Helping Agents. We have about 40, 50 people. We have two great guests tomorrow. One's Dave Ramirez, a great agent out of the Covina area, and with Casey Eberhardt, who's going to talk about building your network. And he's really been my networking coach to help me build what I do. Last call, if you have questions or comments when I get in the conversation, raise your hand in the Zoom app, put it in the chat box. I think I'm caught up. Or if you're watching on the live stream, again, we've got a bunch of people today watching on YouTube and Facebook. Love to have you jump in and chime in with questions. I see a comment from Alexandra. You've done less marketing through mailers and focus on social media platforms. Yeah, I think you and everybody else too. Everyone's always on these platforms. Have you tried a live training in a broker's office? Phil, have you ever tried live? Well, you don't really train in brokers' offices. Do you ever do any kind of live training, either maybe attorneys' offices or association events or anything like that?
You're talking about top secret material now, Bill. I might let you in on a little secret that we're working on. We are currently working on putting together a CLE. So very soon we're going to have CLE that's available, and it'll be approved for both attorneys and paralegals. So it'll be just to teach about probate bonds. And I find even attorneys and paralegals that work in probate and they're in the business, they don't really know a whole lot about bonds. So we're putting together a class. It'll be for a 1 hour credit class, and that should come out, we hope, before the end of the year. So we're working on that. And one thing to mention, Bill, is if anyone has any questions about probate bonds, or you're just having a tough time or don't know where to go, I'm not one of these guys who you have to buy something if you call me. So if anybody has any questions and you just want to know about a bond, I might not know about your state, but I can tell you in general, give you an opinion at least. And anyone's welcome to email or call anytime. And all that information is right at the top of the website.
Great. And that's at probatecourtbond.com. I appreciate that. The CLE, continuing legal education. I literally interviewed a professional fiduciary today, and that's going to come on my YouTube channel, I think, on Friday. And she says that she goes to a lot of networking events with attorneys, and she always goes to the ones that have CLE, because that way she kills two birds with one stone. And attorneys are very focused on going to events because they need a certain amount of hours every year. And so if you can combine education with some networking and marketing, very effective. I thought the same thing all along. I'd love to do a CLE on maybe the probate administration business side of things rather than the legal side. But anyhow, yeah, I think that's fantastic. Okay, so we've got some good people, some people putting in some good networking information. Thank you for that. And then again, just to put in the information for Phil, if you want to reach out to him, probatecourtbond.com. And on there is contact screens and chat information and all kinds of ways to get in touch with him in Cleveland, Ohio, but he services a number of states, as well as can broker and get involved in all 50 states as on a referral basis. So feel free to reach out to him if he can help you to put his contact information in the chat box. I think we're covering out all the questions. I know, again, for those who joined us, this is a little bit of a narrow niche of probate, but I think it's one that's really important. I hope today you learned a couple of things. One is what the bond is, so you can explain to your customers. I would urge you, second of all, to get involved with a bond vendor. Love it to be Phil, especially if it's an area that he services. If not, love it to be your local. My frustration is I know that we need to do business with them, and I want to have more relationship rather than just find out there's problems and have them say no and put my whole transaction on hold. So that was the purpose of our call today. Phil, I really appreciate you jumping in today. I know it's a little later where you are today after hours, so thanks for making time for us. Thanks for making yourself available, and always appreciate chatting with you.
Oh, I appreciate you having me here today, Bill, and look forward to the next time. And again, maybe I'll join you down there at that brewery someday. You never know.
Love to have you. I'll buy you a beer and free tacos for you. How's that to come all the way out?
Taco too. I want to.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. Hey, thanks everybody for joining in today. Again, I know this was a tight topic, but I think it's one that's important. I know I need to learn a little bit more and meet with Phil as well. Love to have you. We do this Probate Weekly every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We live stream it on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you have questions there after hours, I'll catch up those questions or send them to Phil as appropriate. Thank you, everybody, for being on the call today. And